From a defabricated solar-powered garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to keep your cool at your next zoo visit when you come face-to-face with a penguin erection. And now, the podcast host who has no time for penguins because he's too busy checking out the rhinos, Pete Dominic!
Oh, thank you, Pico. Obsessed with rhinos. True indeed. I'd asked you not to use the words penguin erection at the beginning of the podcast. You never know when it's the first time someone is pressing play on a show, but hey, listen, there's no rules for this guy. You can't keep him pinned in. Pico, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who showed up at last night's hangout. It was a rare Wednesday hangout because I am taking off for a long weekend with my friends, but we had a great time at last night's hangout. It was super special. Very happy to have everybody there, and now it's time to get to today's show because I've got a good one. Two great guests, two great conversations. I've got an awesome conversation with Michael Cohen about everything dealing with the debt ceiling and the politics around it, which I thought was really interesting. And for the first time ever on the show, I think it's the first time, I'm not sure if I've had her on the show before because I've talked to her so many times. She's become a friend. She's the vice president of the Florida Education Association, here to talk about the state of Florida teachers and schools, specifically what happened at a very dramatic but triumphant board meeting in Hernando County, Florida the other night. It's Carole Gauronskas. For the first time on the show, she's doing heroic work down there with a whole bunch of her colleagues at the Florida Education Association, the biggest teachers union in Florida. Really great conversation with both Michael Cohen and Carole Gauronskas. I'm very happy to have you joining me. I hope that you're doing all right, hanging in there as we head into one of our first unofficial summer weekends post-Memorial Day. Couple stories I wanted to mention here, though, at the top. The House of Representatives passed a bill to suspend the debt ceiling yesterday with majority support from both Democrats and Republicans. It's being called very bipartisan to overcome the opposition led by hardline conservatives to avoid a catastrophic default. It now heads off to the Senate, where there will be some bumps, but it's expected to pass, and hopefully, and then we'll get to President Biden's desk before the Monday deadline, where the federal government is expected to run out of money to pay its bills. Here's a quick roundup of reactions. First, hollow barrel of a man, Kevin McCarthy, the just barely Speaker of the House, praises Biden's negotiating team.
And we did forge good relationships. I will tell you, the individuals from Shalonda Young to Rashedi, I have the utmost respect for them. They are bright. They are tough negotiators. They represented in a professional manner the whole time. And you've got to understand, this was not easy. This negotiation blew up a number of times, where I wasn't sure at times we weren't going to get somewhere.
Okay, now let's listen to one of his critics in his caucus. This is Republican Dan Bishop.
Bishop, a few minutes ago, Joe Biden put out a statement and said this agreement is good news for the American people and the American economy. 165 Democrats voted for it. You opposed it. Is it good news for the American people?
Pete, I think the indication in the vote that more Democrats voted for the bill than Republicans did, and of course Republicans have a larger number of members in the chamber, is a sign who got the best of the deal. And that the benefits of the deal as sold by the leadership haven't been square with the American people about it.
Okay, and here is Hakeem Jeffries. He is the minority leader in the House.
The question that remains right now is, what will the House Republican majority do? It appears that you may have lost control of the floor of the House of Representatives. Earlier today, 29 House Republicans voted to default on our nation's debt and against an agreement that you negotiated. It's an extraordinary act that indicates just the nature of the extremism that is out of control on the other side of the aisle. Extreme MAGA Republicans attempted to take control of the House floor. Democrats took it back for the American people. And we will continue to do what is necessary under the leadership of President Joe Biden.
All right, there's Akeem Jeffries driving the wedge right in. So we'll see what happens in the Senate, but that's pretty big news, and glad there is something else to be talking about, which is, this. Sources are saying that to CNN and now other outlets as well, federal prosecutors have obtained an audio recording from the summer of 2021 meeting where the former president, disgraced Donald Trump, acknowledged that he held on to classified Pentagon document about a potential attack against Iran. Here's CNN's Jake Tapper.
Breaking news, a new piece of evidence that undercuts Donald Trump's defense in the classified documents investigation. Sources telling CNN federal prosecutors have obtained an audio recording of a summer 2021 meeting where the former president acknowledges he held on to a classified Pentagon document about a potential...
Did he sneeze? Hold on a second.
Of a summer 2021... meeting where the former president acknowledges he held on to a classified Pentagon document about a potential attack against Iran. The recording indicates that not only did Donald Trump know he had classified materials in his possession after he had left the White House, but that Trump also seemed to know there were limits on what and how he could declassify records since he was no longer president. Let's bring in CNN's Caitlin Polans and Paula Reed, who are bringing us the CNN exclusive reporting.
All right, let's get some analysis on it from some legal experts, all of whom are saying pretty much the same thing about what this means for Donald Trump. Here's former Mueller probe investigator Andrew Weissman on MSNBC yesterday saying it could be lights out for the former disgraced president if the recording indeed exists of the former president admitting that he possessed sensitive classified documents that involved a possible attack on Iran. Oh, I hope he sneezes.
This feels like a lights-out indictment of any sort of baloney that he's been saying about, I thought them declassified. He didn't even declassify them in his imagination.
If this reporting is true, and I'm trying not to use hyperbole, this is game over. There's no way that he will not be charged. One, it's a tape recording. Even though the reporting is there are also witnesses, so there could be tape recording with the witnesses. It involves not just possession of classified information, but dissemination of classified information. That puts it into a completely different ballpark when you're at the Department of Justice examining the seriousness of the violation and whether to bring charges. It also is a separate crime to disseminate versus just possess. It differentiates Biden and Pence. So from just a political perspective, it's huge because it's a way of saying there's no evidence that this happened with respect to President Biden or former Vice President Pence. The information is not just classified information. It's one of the most sensitive types of classified information, which is war plans involving potential attack on Iran. So from every single aspect of this, if this reporting is accurate and there is this tape recording, there will be an indictment. And it is hard to see how, given all of the evidence that we've been talking about, that there will not be a conviction here.
Wow. Andrew Weissman, game over on MSNBC. What about Trump's former White House lawyer, Ty Cobb? He said his former boss is in a tough spot after it was reported the Department of Justice has audio of Trump admitting he took classified documents upon leaving office.
Well, it could mean two things. One, it further enhances the obstruction case because it eviscerates the two defenses that Trump has put forward. The first being that merely by taking documents, he declassifies them, or that he has the authority, if he's playing with the ducks in the hot tub, to declassify them in his own mind. Those are out the door now because he's admitted that he understood there were restraints on what he could do with documents. As we know from the 16 agency letters that were disclosed 2 weeks ago and the multiple people who advised him to that effect from the White House counsel's office upon his departure. So that's a compelling fact. This makes it easier to prove, but it's not in real dispute. On the other hand, it does show that he's been deceptive in his own statements. The second is it could put additional pressure on Jack Smith to tie the obstruction case to the actual possession and use or dissemination of the classified documents. Now, whether he will or not is, of course, for him to decide. It's a strategic decision. My own view is he doesn't need to, extend or compromise the obstruction case by taking on the burden of the classified.
All right, well, I can't take any more of Ty Cobb's blathering, not nearly as articulate or as succinct as Andrew Weissman, but there you have it, a couple different views on what this means, the classified documents case, what it means for Donald Trump, who's long maintained that he declassified all these documents found at Mar-a-Lago last year. If the reporting is accurate, it indicates that Trump knew he definitely did not. Special Counsel Jack Smith will have not the last word. I guess that will be with Merrick Garland, who Jack Smith will be reporting all of this to. But there you go. Pretty big deal in Trump world yesterday. For his part, Trump just went off on leakers and how this information came out, didn't deny it, and then went off on Ron DeSantis for changing his name, at least how he pronounces his name, from DeSantis to DeSantis. That's what Trump seriously was focused on yesterday in a series of posts on his dumb social media network that isn't Twitter or anything else. All right, well, that's what I've got for you in terms of sound. The two big stories yesterday. The Texas governor has appointed an interim attorney general to temporarily serve while there is a trial for Ken Paxton, who's awaiting trial in the Texas Senate. Could result in his permanent removal. That's set to begin at the end of August. Reports now that Twitter may be worth 1/3 of what Elon Musk paid for it. And why? Because the guy who bought it destroyed it himself. For his part yesterday, Elon Musk was going off on people on the left that have no sense of humor. And there's some truth to that. But I will not cede the ground of comedy to the right. That's for damn sure. Job openings hit a 10.1 million number. Labor market still very strong. And Canada has become the first country to put health warnings on individual cigarettes. How about that? Birth rates among U.S. teens are the lowest they've ever been, according to the CDC. That's a good thing for teens. I don't know if it's a great thing for America, for our population, or for humanity, but good thing for teens. Goal has always been to bring down teen pregnancy. And that is all I've got for you at the moment. I am now going to bring you my conversations with Carole Gauronskas and Michael Cohen, and also ask that you send me your money with a paid subscription to this podcast, for which I cannot do without. Let's all go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic if we haven't already, and sign up now for as little as $5 a month. Send me into the weekend with some new subscribers, perhaps. That would be great news, as it is June 1st, and at the beginning of the month, you always lose a few due to the credit card expirations, which is always dramatic and angst-ridden for me. Talked a little bit about it at last night's Hangout for those of you that show up. So please sign up now. Go to standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominic. All right. Well, you know him, and most of you love him. We love his analysis. He writes the Substack, truthandconsequences.substack.com. Former Boston Globe columnist, speechwriter, State Department. Awesome on Twitter at SpeechBoy71. I caught up with Michael Cohen. I think it's real good. So let's do it. There he is, Michael Cohen, the real Michael Cohen, the Speech Boy. You've been on fire with your Substack, your MSNBC, your tweets. I'm very much enjoying your work lately. Usually I don't.
I appreciate that, Pete. Thank you.
Usually I don't.
Yeah, I know.
But you know, I'm a paid subscriber. I get the special stuff, and I really
get the special sauce.
I really like it. Lots to talk about with you, obviously, but. Man, this Joe Biden, huh? He's I feel like he's defied even most of his progressive critics with his weird style of not wanting to dunk on his opponents, not wanting to be divisive. A lot of us criticized him and said, you got to be divisive. Call these assholes out. That's what they are. Nothing's going to change. You're not going to get anything done being nice. What do you think?
It's interesting because, last week I noticed that some Democrats were complaining that he wasn't publicly out there talking about the debt limit issue. and they needed better messaging, which is like one of my biggest pet peeves, this idea that better messaging wins you fights like this. It would have hardened the position of Republicans. It wouldn't have helped at all, unless Biden intended to act unilaterally, which he clearly didn't want to do. I think it's pretty obvious he wanted a deal. And I think, look, I understand the criticism that progressives have made that he should have acted unilaterally, should have basically undercut Republicans' effort to hold the debt limit hostage. But I think from Biden's perspective, I think he sees himself as a conciliatory figure, as an empathetic figure, and as somebody who can work with Republicans. And, a lot of people, myself included, sort of mocked him when he said that he could work with Mitch McConnell and others. And, he did. And he has worked with Kevin McCarthy. And, he's proven a lot of us wrong, but he's able to work with them. And I think one of the ways he's done it is by not listening to the sort of very online community and the activist community, but instead trying to find common ground with Republicans. And I think on the debt limit issue, you see a good example of this. I didn't mention this in my piece, but I think it's sort of underappreciated that he was willing to do something on, work requirements that they were demanding. He knew they needed a win on this.
Yeah.
He's willing to give them something, even though it looks like actually it's more of a win for him than it was for Republicans. But he was willing to...
The whole deal or the work requirements part?
I think the whole deal, but work requirements in particular, it appears to be expanding the number of people who now are eligible for SNAP benefits, which is quite a win for Democrats. I know, right? And won't save any money at all as far as kind of the deficit. But, also he's not spiking the football. He's not bragging about a great deal he did. He's not, and before that, he didn't go out and really attack the Republicans, which I think, probably helps build trust. I think a lot of people have said to me, I've gotten text messages from a lot of friends saying, I don't understand why McCarthy did this. And I'll be honest, I'm confused also. I find it, from a political standpoint, a little strange because he didn't get much in return. And he is now might face a challenge to the speakership. And I do wonder if part of the reason he made the deal was that he felt he could trust Biden, and he felt that making a deal, gave him a sort of air of legitimacy than walking away. And that's something that I think Biden sort of seeded the ground for to have happen. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for making it easier for McCarthy and Republicans in general to make a deal with him on this issue.
Yeah, well said. Don't you think our arguments and our thoughts about politics and politicians have to be fluid as the Congress is, as the makeup is? Meaning, Joe Biden had both the House and Senate for 2 years, but he couldn't get everything they wanted because of the Senate filibuster rule, because of, frankly, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Then he lost the House. So now he has to deal with Republicans, and our arguments need to take into consideration the leverage or the ability, no matter how you look at it, and I look at it from every angle I can, as to what he can get done. And people said, twist Joe Manchin's arm. And we all realistically said, how? Where? What's he? There's no actual answer to get Joe Manchin, except for when he actually did in the end, right? Yeah. And now, what's he supposed to do with these House Republicans? Like, there's only just so much you can do given the leverage that you have. And I think people don't really change their arguments based on, every 2 years, the makeup of who's in there.
I mean, look, I think it's a good point. And I think, if you look at this deal as kind of, if you take out the debt limit and say, what would a budget deal between a Republican-led House and Biden look like? It would look a lot like this deal. Although, frankly, I think it would have been a better deal for Republicans. And it might, not a lot better, but slightly better. And it probably would have been accompanied by a government shutdown, which we're probably not going to have now. So that's a big win also, I think, for Biden. And interestingly, I mean, the one criticism I can make of McCarthy is he's given up a lot of his political leverage by making this deal, right? He can't default. He can't use the debt limit as a tool. It really can't use government shutdown as much as a tool. It does kind of limit his leverage. But I think you're right, that this was kind of the compromise that was a logical compromise to make. Now, I do think, again, I think that Biden did a really good job of, not telegraphing where his red lines were. It's so funny because I saw a lot of, liberal critics of Biden saying he needs to say where his red lines are. Actually, that really wasn't, I think, a useful negotiating tactic. I think by being somewhat fluid, it gave him a little more flexibility, as opposed to McCarthy, who said work requirements have to be in the bill, which meant that he kind of had to get it, And so I think he gave up a lot in return for getting some on work requirements, because he basically said, I have to have this. So I do think that Biden showed himself to be a pretty good negotiator. And also, I think, realized that, he was going to have to work with these guys, and this was the price he was going to have to pay. But again, I go back to what I said initially, he didn't pay that much of a price. I mean, this deal looks pretty good from a Democratic perspective.
Yeah, it really, really does. The more I read about it, the more. I mean, obviously, the continued increase in defense spending is absurd, but I don't know when we're ever going to see
like it either.
A change in that. But, the other thing that you said in your MSNBC piece, which I think is really important, and you're always good about this. Again, I hate to compliment you this way, but you pay very close attention to politics. I do. Most of the people who listen, watch, read us do. But you're good at talking about public opinion and what most people think. And as you say, public opinion shows that the gap between the two parties has seemingly never been wider, but that people want them to get along. Now, you and I say, how can we get along with these crazy people? But you're not. That's not who we're that's not who we're communicating with. Most people didn't really know about this debt ceiling thing was even happening.
Right. They didn't know about it. They didn't care. They don't care that Biden made certain compromises.
But everybody would have known had it defaulted. And then the question is, who's going to get the blame? And it's going to be the incumbent, the president.
Right. When, it's raining blood and cats are sleeping with dogs, I think they would have woken up to the realization that the shit hit the fan. Look, I just think, one thing that I try to do when I think about politics is remember that I am not the median voter.
Right.
And not just as far as my political views, but in my level of knowledge that I have of politics. And and I haven't been on the road in a while, but when you do talk to voters, even those who come to political events, their political knowledge is limited, and you have to sort of understand the way most voters think about politics. They don't think of these details the way that you and I do.
Right.
They look at this fight and they say, oh, there they go again. Democrats, Republicans fighting over, some stupid thing. That's how they view it. And so for Biden to come in and say, I'm going to work with Republicans, and then to do it and to be conciliatory and to compromise, is I think a really potent political weapon that he has, or political narrative, maybe is a better way to put it. And as I said in the piece, it's the really weird paradox about the Biden presidency, which is that we are living in this era of intense polarization. I mean, that's not a lie. It's true. We are intensely divided as a country around politics. We are much more inclined to view our political opponents as enemies, not as rivals. And yet you have this president who really isn't that guy, who really isn't a nasty, angry, divisive, overly partisan politician. I mean, he can be partisan, but doesn't define him the way it defines Donald Trump, the way it defines Ron DeSantis, the way it defines, most Republicans running for president. And even, somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who I like and I respect, she came across as much more partisan, I think, than Joe Biden did or does. So I just think that there's an interesting paradox there. And I think Biden has kind of figured out, what works in American politics now. And it's basically being Joe Biden. That works.
I have been thinking, just real quick, I don't know how important this is to anybody, but I was just thinking about this. I feel like Obama was very much, you might have mentioned this, cool and tried to get along with everybody,
yes.
But he couldn't do what Joe Biden can do. And it's because we could say it's because he's black. We could say it's because at the very beginning they said they were going to say no to everything. But I think he tried so hard. That was a criticism of him, too, that he gave too much away, that he compromised too much. But I wonder why Joe Biden has been able to get more done than Barack Obama. That's my question.
I think it's, a couple of reasons. I think one of them is that Barack Obama was black and Joe Biden is white. I think it has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
I think,
And by the way, what that means, real quick, I feel like, I don't want to speak for the people that didn't like Obama, whether they knew it or not, because he's black, is that Obama was going to be looking out for and advantaging black people because he was black. And Joe Biden won't necessarily do that, which couldn't be further from the truth, because Biden's been pretty good on race, I think.
Yeah, he has. And I think, but having said that, I think I think some of the dynamics are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
sure.
Biden has a much more progressive caucus, so he has less, sort of centrist Democrats to worry about.
Great point. Great point. Yep.
So I think that's, it's helped Biden a great deal. So, Obama was getting he was getting pushback from his own party.
Yeah.
I think it's also just a little bit the current dynamic, at least in the House, is McCarthy has such a narrow margin that, it does. I wonder if he would be as solicitous of Biden if he had a 20-seat majority. I don't know. Maybe. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think there's just a different dynamic at play here as far as the sort of political makeup of the two parties.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I just think race plays a big role here. And I think also Biden, a lot of these guys know Biden. Like McConnell knows Biden. A lot of the senators know Biden. And so he's got a different, I think, relationship with a lot of these folks. I think it's also kind of in his political DNA. I mean, I said before, I made the sort of joke that like the best way to succeed is by being Joe Biden. But Joe Biden is a very compassionate, empathetic person. Even if you don't like him, I don't think anyone would question he's empathetic. I think anyone would question that he is a warm guy. Maybe some would argue too warm of a guy. But he's a very, compassionate person. And I think Obama was a little more aloof. He didn't have any kind of relationship with members of Congress and senators. I think that actually, in a weird way, Biden can be a little more charming Republicans than Obama can. Yeah. But it's a different political moment, and it's hard to sort of make the comparison.
It really is. It's a tough question to answer. I think you did your best you possibly could on it because it is a very different political moment. And obviously, it's post-Trump. Not really post-Trump. I shouldn't say that at all. But it's after
well, I wish, but not quite.
Well, what he's broken. You write in your MSNBC piece, and I think this is it. You write the debt limit fight has magnified a point that perhaps gets lost in the litany of genuine and manufactured outrages that define our political moment. Most Americans would prefer less conflict, not more.
Yeah.
Voters will reward the politicians who turn down the heat rather than the ones who keep throwing gasoline on the fire. That was certainly the case when Biden won election 2020. It's arguably helped Democrats overperform in the 2020 midterms. If Biden is able to ride his positive politics to re-election 2024, it may prove contrary to an old and oft-repeated saw. Sometimes good guys finish first. Now, I don't know that applies to Republican primaries. I think Republican primary voters want the guy who will be the biggest dick, which is why I thought Pompeo would be more popular. But
a reasonable assumption to make. He is a jerk. There's no question about it.
That does bring us to these Ron DeSantis comments that you have been outraged by. And I honestly feel dumb for not knowing why you've made a big deal about this. And I don't think you've really spelled it out to my satisfaction. In case people didn't hear it, I'm going to try to play it here.
Is right now the time for Ron DeSantis to run for president?
Because everyone knows if I'm the nominee, I will beat Biden and I will serve 2 terms and I will be able to destroy leftism in this country and leave woke ideology on the dustbin of history.
What's so wrong about that? That's boilerplate.
Not boilerplate. Boilerplate is to say I want to be president for all Americans. To say that you want to stop leftism, I get that. No, sure, you want to stop certain things from happening. I get all that. But you want to destroy leftism. Okay? A lot of Americans are leftists. A lot of Americans are liberal. And leftism, by the way, the way that DeSantis defines it is basically anybody who's to the left of Attila the Hun. And that's kind of how he would, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's so outrageous as someone who really has always positioned himself on the hard left. I'm a lot more pragmatic, I think, probably than I used to be, but policy wise. But to hear him, to hear these guys constantly call liberals leftists is offensive to leftists.
I don't think myself as a leftist, but the fact that I think that LGBTQ plus Americans should be treated with respect, I guess in his mind, makes me a leftist and a proponent of woke ideology. It's the destroy part that I find appalling. That's just not the way you should talk about your political opponents in this country. We talk about destroying communism in Soviet
Biden
communism.
Do that with his...
We talk about destroying fascism. We talk about destroying our own people, right? It's gross. And I hate to say this, because I hate the F word, but it's almost like fascist adjacent. It's really kind of a fascist notion that our opponents are, not worthy of even participating in the political process. They must be destroyed. It's antithetical, I think, to the way that most American politicians have approached these kind of discussions and conversations for most of our history, at least modern history. And I understand that politics can be nasty, but destroying an entire ideology is something else altogether. And it's just gross. And I think, it's emblematic of who he is as a person. And, he's a prick. And I say that in complete sincerity because I think that he leans into being a prick. And I think that if you watch him, and I've watched a bunch of his appearances on the campaign trail, he relishes poking and fun at and mocking his opponents. He relishes being a jerk, right? Acting like a jerk.
Well, it works.
It's not something I'm making up. I'm sorry?
It works so far. It works to become the Republican governor of Florida. It works, those techniques.
Yes, it does. It does. And it has. But although he didn't do this as much in his first campaign, he did more in his second campaign. But still, he relishes denigrating his political opponents. And if you look at, and I linked to a really great piece from Mother Jones from this week that points out that, this is not unusual. He governs this way also. He governs in a way to go after his political opponents and to hurt his political opponents. And look what he's done with Disney. It's a perfect example of it. Yeah. He's just an unpleasant person, is so clearly not interested in working with people who don't believe everything he believes. And that's the opposite of Joe Biden. And I think I thought the contrast is really interesting to see Biden, working with Republicans, trying to understand where they were coming from, put himself in their shoes, not spiking the football after this, I think it was pretty apparent, a good budget deal on the debt limit, to DeSantis, who can't help himself, but, be a prick. Sorry to say it that way, but I think, sometimes we have to be honest in politics about this stuff, and he's a prick, and that's how he acts. And it's very purposeful, in my opinion.
Yeah. The other guy is a prick is Donald Trump, though, and that's what everybody.
But he's a prick, but it's in a different way.
How?
He can't kind of help himself, right? Donald Trump is such a narcissist; he can't really help but be.
You know what?
A jerk.
You are absolutely right. Donald Trump is can't control it. It's who he is. He's broken. He's an insecure narcissist who cares about nobody and anything. So the criticism is more valid for DeSantis and Pompeo and other people who are huge pricks because they're turning it on and they can turn it off.
Exactly. Like if I can use an analogy to Succession, for those of you who watch it, watch Succession?
I did, every episode.
Okay. So Shiv Roy reminds me of Trump because she is a jerk in a way and doesn't even realize I think she's doing it. While Roman Roy kind of goes out of his way to act like a jerk because he thinks that somehow makes him more appealing or it makes him more dominant or whatever the reason. There's a difference here. And I think with DeSantis, I think he is a prick, but I think he goes out of his way to act like that.
Yeah.
I think he thinks that is politically appealing to Republican voters. Now, you could argue that he can't help himself, and that might be true also, but it's different. I don't think it's because I think it's different with Trump. Trump, I don't think he even understands that he's being a prick. I don't think he even gets it because he's so oblivious to social cues and social norms that he does these terrible things and doesn't even realize why they're wrong. It's what I find so disturbing about Trump as a person, that he is oblivious to his own dickishness.
Yep. Yeah, no, and it has led him, and I think will lead him into more indictments. His stupidity, along with the dickishness, he's gotten away with it forever because he's always been able to separate himself, use cutouts, doesn't use email, and mostly.
Wait a minute. Just before we came online today, there's a piece out on CNN that says that he is on tape saying that he knew he wasn't allowed to hold on to classified material after he left the White House. Like literally recorded saying it.
I did see that. I didn't quite understand.
He's such an idiot, right? Who says that? It's moronic.
Well, if he didn't know he was being taped, I can, usually he's a little bit, well, I was going to say he's more careful. But
I wouldn't even say it publicly. It's like you're walking yourselves into an indictment potentially. Look, at this point, if he doesn't get indicted for this, I would be stunned.
The classified documents case.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, he's.
I mean, based
on the evidence that's come out, it's
hard to follow. But I read something about some dress rehearsal about moving the documents. Like there was.
Yeah, they did dress rehearsal about moving the documents so that the FBI wouldn't find them. That is an obstruction of justice. I don't know what the hell is.
Ron DeSantis is. Well, I was going to ask you. Now Glenn Youngkin is going to get in, and Chris Christie is going to get in. And what do they know that we don't know?
Not much, I don't think. I mean, I don't know what Youngkin is thinking. He doesn't have name recognition. He didn't get in the fall. Doesn't have name recognition. They won't be able to raise the money to be able to, be in the top tier candidates. Mike Pence has nothing else to do. He's just bored. I mean, what else is he going to do, right? I think maybe with Youngkin, the thought process is that Trump might, get indicted and drop out, which seems like a long shot, or he might, his numbers might diminish if he's indicted multiple times, that he figures he'd be in there in case things fall apart. And DeSantis isn't really, I mean, look, I will say this. I think a lot of reason people are jumping in is because DeSantis doesn't seem so scary anymore. I think that's a big part of it.
Because DeSantis doesn't seem so scary.
No, I think that I don't think if DeSantis was polling really well and was polling, neck and neck with Trump, I'm not sure all these people would be getting in the race. Pence might because he has nothing else to do. But I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. But DeSantis faltering, the opportunity to be the non-Trump candidate in case Trump falters or, drops dead, then becomes more attractive. So that's, I suspect, what's happening. It's also that, look, running president kind of fun. You get to talk to people and get, people applaud you, and you get all these aides, running around and trying to help, serve you. And I guess it's kind of fun. And again, for a lot of politicians, what else are you going to do? I mean, what's Chris Christie going to do? Work in private equity? He wants to be, he's a politician. He wants to be on the campaign trail. I get it. And I think for Youngkin, it's like, he's just kind of, he is waiting to see how things play themselves out. But again, I mean, I think, all of them have a problem, which is that even if DeSantis is doing poorly, he has a ton of money. So being able to outraise these guys is like next to impossible. You're not going to get the kind of attention if you don't have the kind of money that DeSantis can raise and Trump has raised. So you really hope for both of them to falter, and then sort of somebody else picks up the mantle. And that's, I think, a lot of them are thinking about it. They want to run for vice president.
Right. Or they just, the more me or you get our name out there, the more lucrative it would be for our work. Like, that's true of pretty much anybody, even if you own a restaurant, and your name gets out there when you run for president and you go on TV, you get television appearances, you get, so there's always...
Chris Christie's already run for president, right? He already has his name out there. Mike Pence was vice president, for Christ's sake. I mean, they don't really need to do more.
True, those two, yeah.
So I do find it a little bit odd. But, again, and so also one more thing I'll say is sometimes people run for president as a dress rehearsal, before they run in 4 years. And I think, frankly, after this many times, if I'm a Republican, 2028 is what I'm focusing on, because this is going to be a tough year to win, not only to knock off Trump, but to be an incumbent president. But 2028, it's really hard for a party to win 3 elections in a row, which Democrats would need to do to hold the White House. And I would much rather that a Republican run then.
What do you think of this? I just put this out on Twitter. Just, me with my expert analysis on things. I wrote, I think Trump trashing Kayleigh McEnany, his former press secretary, is going to break the fever. It's the thing. He's gone too far. Look for support to crumble for this offense. # expert analysis. I am looking, like, if you need an idea for your next article, I think this is where you want to start.
You think Kayleigh McEnany is just a bridge too far for MAGA world?
I think it's hilarious that happened yesterday, and we have seen so many people. I've been paying attention to it from right-wing Newsmax to Brian Kilmeade to Richard Grinnell to a bunch of former Jenna Ellis, his lawyer, like a bunch of hardcore Trump supporters saying, "Hey, what are you doing? Why would you go after Kayleigh?"
What he does
means nothing. Means nothing.
I mean, you could say 99 nice things about Trump. You do one thing to upset him, and that's all he'll remember. Their sense of victimization is so strong, so I think it's not surprising at all that he went after her. There's no one he won't go after.
Here's another quick hot take for you to react to. Aaron Rupar tweeted just now, if you would have told me a year ago that a meal of Chick-fil-A washed down by a Bud Light would trigger conservative, I would have asked you what you're smoking. What's going on?
Can I say one thing? I want to say one thing about this. What I'm sort of, as I find interesting is that the anti-trans thing, well, this began on the right as an anti-trans kind of moment, right? With attacking Democrats for pushing, transgender therapies and so forth. And it turned into this grooming thing. But it's sort of interesting.
Democrats weren't pushing.
Right.
They were saying,
right. Thank you.
They were saying,
was the argument.
If your doctor, I'm not getting in between you and your doctor. And the entire medical establishment.
This was the argument that they were making, right? And of course, the argument on trans issues in the States is they want to protect kids from being, mutilated and so forth. But what's interesting, and I think not so overly surprising, is how quickly it's morphed into from anti-trans into just anti-LGBTQ, period, right?
I'm surprised by that too, but I don't know how you.
I'm not surprised by it at all. I'm not surprised by it at all because I think a lot of that was sort of kept in check for a few years because it was like socially unacceptable to be homophobic, and now it's fine. And now, of course, they can use that anti-gay bias. Just say that. They can use that as like a catch-all, right? We care about trans issues, but we're just gonna it's just gonna become like a way for us to sort of like surreptitiously go after all gay people. Yeah. And like this thing with Target and the Kohl's thing, I think is sort of funny. Kohl's the department store.
I don't know about what happened with Kohl's.
So they have a onesie that shows somebody holding up a pride flag. And they claim this is, wokeness and grooming and what have you. I mean, there's nothing pretty trans about that. It's just basically embracing people who are LGBTQ. And of course, there's lots of people in this country who have parents who are gay, parents who are two men or two women. And so it's sort of natural they would want to, I can imagine a onesie that would celebrate that for their child. And so, but the thing is, it's really evolved into this larger attack on the gay community in general. Like you can't, attacks on pride marches, attacks on drag races, things like that. It is really like disturbing how a couple of years after it felt like public displays of homophobia were no longer acceptable. They've now become acceptable again. Like, can you imagine if people complained about Target celebrating or marking Black History Month? No one would do that because, well, some might, but most wouldn't because it would be seen as racist, which it is. But now marking Pride Month, no, that is clearly a legitimate thing for conservatives to do. And it's just gross the way that this sort of homophobia has become sort of legitimized again.
Yeah,
in large part because of Republicans. I mean, the Republicans have done this by going on this whole grooming pedophile bullshit as a way to attack Democrats. They've kind of, as they always do, unleashed the worst elements of their coalition.
Yep. I think there's a big game changer though with that. When Bud Light put a trans woman on a can and everybody went crazy and started boycotting it. We were all the same way by the way, same way I am when progressives are screaming to boycott some like Exxon or something. Like, it doesn't work. People are still going to go get Amazon, whatever you want to say. It almost never makes a dent. And the only thing that matters is the quarterly profits. But apparently Bud Light has down like 30% in sales. They were the number one beer in the country. So it's the only thing I can think of on the left or right off the top of my head, or I've been thinking about it for a week or so, that's really like hurt the bottom line of a big name company. And so Target, Kohl's, everybody else has got to be worried about it, that they're going to lose money, which is the only reason they're selling their fucking pride bullshit in the first place.
I think the Target one is a little more specific. I think what they were worried about was that there was threats to their workers. I'm a little more sympathetic actually to Target on this one than other places because apparently people were like attacking their staff, and I think from their perspective, they're worried about lawsuits. That's a fair point. I'm saying like before you put the pride thing out, you're now thinking twice because of what could happen. I mean, I just don't want to give Target or Bud Light or Kohl's any credit for
being allies, if you will. They're selling shit. It's not like they're giving it away.
They're allies because it's in their interest to be allies.
Or not, or it's not. That's my point. Thank you. It may not be in their interest.
Well, more often than not, it is in their interest to be allies. I mean, there's internal. Look, I used to.
That always used to be the case.
Like I remember coming up with this situation once, like years and years ago. I worked for an airline as like doing some writing stuff for them, and I was always sort of struck by, this was in early 2000s, like why they were so, leaning into being a gay friendly company. And I asked somebody there, and they're like, "Do you know the stereotype about flight
attendants?
What's it called?
Flight attendants.
What? I'm sorry.
Flight attendants
being predominantly gay."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Well, that's true. A lot of them are gay,
yeah.
And so we can't go. It's important to us from an internal communication standpoint to respect that and to respect our employees who are gay. And so that's why we are so for leaning on this issue." Now, you can argue cynical. It's a cynical thing they do, but there's a rationale for why they do it. And frankly, most companies now do it because it's one way to get to recruit employees. Like if you're a homophobic company, you have a hard time recruiting, the creme de la creme. They don't want to work for a company that is homophobic.
Right.
So I think there is a lot of, it's not just the bottom line, it's also an internal issue as well for a lot of companies. I mean, their brand does matter to them. And, for the case of, and all of these cases, like the Bud Light thing is, I agree with you, it's pretty striking what happened to them, that their sales went down so precipitously. But a lot of companies cannot afford to do what Target did, right? I mean, and I'm not gonna boycott Target for the same reason that you don't. I mean, all those companies are fundamentally kind of evil at heart. I mean, I'm going to pick and choose why they're evil. I just think in the case of I think a lot of companies are going to find themselves having to think about how to handle these issues because it's not so simple.
It's ridiculous for so many different reasons. But if you're buying your clothes, and most of us are, at any one of these department stores, they're being made by people that aren't.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just start there and, buy used. Go to thrift stores.
There's not a company, I think, in the world you couldn't think of a reason to boycott, honestly.
Exactly.
And by the way, I love the fact that Chick-fil-A hiring a diversity human relations person was so upsetting. Chick-fil-A is the most, Bible thumping restaurant in the country. They close on Sundays or in and out. I think they're usually closed on Sundays, right?
Yeah, but apparently there's new video of the CEO talking about racial justice, and we should be shining black people's shoes, and he literally shined a black person's shoes. I never heard of this guy's this Christian bigot. But the thing about these Christian bigots is they weren't always racist. They want black and brown people in their churches because they need them, because some of them, they don't see that. But now many of them are. Obviously, it's Christian nationalism is often intersects with white supremacy. No doubt about it.
But again, it's one more example, by the way. How would you complain about them hiring a human relations person responsible for diversity? It's come another roundabout way to be racist,
DEI.
In Florida, they got rid of all their DEI diversity. Diversity,
equity, inclusion,
right? They got all these programs.
Every company in America, people are good luck.
In America has.
Wait till you find out what NASCAR does and what every, all the outdoor, hunting companies and Cabela's and all them. Yeah.
No, but I think it's interesting. It's become another way to play to racial animus, play to homophobia.
No doubt.
It's another way to do it. And, is it surprising that people are responding, that the worst people in America, the worst racists and the worst homophobes are responding positively to these messages? No. I mean, that's exactly how this has always gone. And they keep doing this. They keep unleashing these malignant forces into American society. And then they're, shocked when people respond negatively to them. I don't know if you saw this, but Ted Cruz, who's one of the worst people in politics, came out and, he attacked this law in Uganda that basically criminalizes homosexuality. Yeah. And he got attacked by the right.
Yeah.
By the right for somehow being
something happened. I think something
on gay rights.
I think I got nothing here, no evidence, but I think something shook him. Something happened with his daughter who did some kind of self-harm thing. It's very private, obviously. And something maybe shook with him that hit very, very close to home. I don't know why he would be outspoken all of a sudden.
I think it's because it's a terrible law and he wants to look like he's not a complete monster.
Really?
And It's a law that basically is like the death penalty for people who are gay. It's a horrible law.
Well, a lot of Americans support that idea.
Well, I mean, yeah, the ones who are telling Ted Cruz that he's wrong.
Michael, you're doing great work.
Thank you, Pete. So are you. You're fantastic.
I am
having great people on, and everyone just loves your show. It's really always a pleasure to come on.
I always love that you almost always say yes, and people really enjoy.
I love to talk to you, Pete. My pleasure.
Yep, we always have good talks. I always love your take, even if I don't agree. You make me think. You always make me think, and that's why I love supporting your work and having you on. So, I will talk to you probably never again.
This is it, Pete. Goodbye.
Final appearance.
Nice knowing you. Nice knowing you. That's my child right there. No.
Who's that?
No. We're not doing that now.
All right, that's it. There he goes. His child showed up, and that's all we're going to say about that, because he didn't want me to have his child on the show, which is fine. All right, Michael Cohen, go let him know that you heard him here on the show at SpeechBoy71. Go subscribe to his Substack at truthandconsequences.substack.com. truthandcons.substack.com. There you have it. And now it's time for my second guest on today's show. She's the vice president of the Florida's largest association of professional employees, the Florida Education Association. She's the first education staff professional to be elected as an officer at FEA. Previously, she worked as an exceptional student education paraprofessional at an elementary school in St. Augustine, Florida. Really excited to have her here on the show to explain what happened the other night in Hernando County, because it's so similar to what happened in where I live and my school district and around the country. We're seeing these trends, and I thought this conversation, although it's centered on Florida, could be talking about your school district, my school district, and so many. I highly recommend you look into it and what happened there. But they were trying to get rid of the superintendent. They were trying to create division and make hay. But the students and the teachers came out, and it went till 2:30 in the morning. Over 130 or 40 people got up to speak. They did not oust the superintendent. The board is 3-2 against what I would call the fascists, the moms of liberty, the Christian nationalists, and a whole bunch of other labels that you could call the opposition down there and across the country. I had a great conversation with Carole about this. Check her out on Twitter, on Facebook. Go to feaweb.org. And here we go. Let's do it, Madam Vice President. Carole Gauronskas on the air. There's Carole. She's always on the road, joining me from somewhere in Florida. She is traveling the state, doing amazing work, as you were last night. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Pete.
Lots to talk about with you, but last night, things came to a culmination, as I talked about in the intro, in Hernando County. You were there. You were in the room. Lay out what's going on there, and how similar it may be to other school districts in the state of Florida.
Well, it was a full room. They had to move it to a venue that could hold at least 600, and we had at least 600 with a line still waiting to get in. I would tell you, in my perspective, it was probably 4-1 as far as community and educators, and versus the Proud Boy, other supporters that were not maybe supportive of the superintendent or of the educators in Hernando County.
The issues are similar to what we're seeing around the country. I watched a lot of that meeting last night online, and it seemed eerily similar to what happened in my district, which you know a little bit about here in Rockland County, just north of New York City. We all heard about this teacher who played a Disney film, and they went after her. So what were the issues? What are the issues there? They wanted to get rid of the superintendent. They want to take over curriculum. I mean, what are they? What's the big cudgel, the big issue?
The other issues were surrounding book bannings and the LGBTQ community, where I have to tell you, these students were eloquent in their responses as they came to the microphone. They spoke of their truths. They spoke of the care and the nurturing they have received in their community, that Superintendent Stratton had always seen them, that their teachers gave them a safe place, It was really incredible.
Yes, I saw that. I saw so many students. I was really impressed to see all of these students and teachers. I didn't quite see that as much in my community because I think people were more afraid. These students and teachers seemed unafraid, Carole.
I would say you're absolutely right. They were unafraid. The school year ended today for the students, and their truths were going to be heard. There was a lot of blowback. I mean, when you heard one of these gentlemen, and I say that very loosely, this male speak so violently, in my opinion, toward children from the LGBTQ community, it was truly vile. And these kids continued to come to the mic and to continue to speak. They were not going to be silenced. This man was a bigot, and it was shown to be, to his community that he is a bigot.
Carole, the larger issue that most people know, and I'm glad that we're talking about what happened in this one county, in this one school district, and you guys at FEA have been obviously so instrumental and supportive of the teachers and those others in the school. But the issue that most people know about is the governor there, Ron DeSantis. And it seems that, my question is, how much can you do when the government is behind so many of these policies? Republicans, obviously with majorities in the state house, a Republican governor who's Ron DeSantis. How much can you push back, fight back as a union, as individual school districts?
I think we have no choice, Pete. I think we have to answer misinformation, disinformation, out and out lies, that have been spread. The former governor's PAC money, he's not a former governor, but his former PAC is now being run by Senator Blaise Ingoglia. And he put out some flyers. They did some informational spots to get people to be at that school board meeting. And I would have to say, whatever money they spent, it was a failure, because we really had that room 4-1 at a minimum as far as who was there to speak in support of the superintendent, to speak in support of the educators. So I just think many voices, when we come together, we have the ability to set the record straight. And we, as a national member, as a state affiliate of a national large union, both at the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, we're making sure that what we are seeing and hearing and living through here in Florida, that every other state knows what is happening to the educational system in this state, so that they don't repeat it by electing this man president.
Well, that's a really important point for the rest of the country. But I think the other more salient point is for school districts across the country to see what you all accomplished at that meeting last night, what we accomplished in our campaign. This is about control of the Board of Education, and especially also about who the superintendent is. Where I live, and I think where in most school districts, the board interviews and hires the superintendent. My understanding is down in Florida, there is a different, somewhat different system in certain places, or at least that senator you just mentioned wants to change it, where the superintendent is chosen not by the Board of Education, which would be a game changer, because you could put in any fascist that you want, and that would have a huge negative outcome, obviously, on the district and on who's on the board. Is that what's happening? Am I right about this?
So, yes and no, and a little bit. What he would like to see is everyone elected. Many districts in Florida do appoint their superintendent. And in this case, they would like to remove that, because then they have no control from Tallahassee. If it goes to the voters, of course, the money that can be spent to elect someone that is not qualified is absolutely within the realm of reality in this case. So what we've got, and in this case, he got a vote of confidence by the board. The two new members were put in their place, I think, quite well done by everyone who spoke. And I will say that the superintendent in this case really thoughtfully put out his remarks, making them both appear that they don't do their job because they haven't. They've not done their due diligence of knowing the situations in its entirety before speaking to the public where they had no place to speak to the public. It should have gone through proper procedures and policies that are in place in Hernando. And I think that's where we have to be very, very good at making sure the information that is put out is accurate, honest, and reflects what teachers, what educators do in their classrooms in the state of Florida. And I think it was really well done last night.
The audacity for a handful of loud parents, sometimes it's more, to act that they know more than the administrators, the teachers, and the students. That's what I noticed last night in terms of so many students and teachers going up there. This idea of parental rights, this idea that we parents should be the ones who are in charge of what our kids are learning. I hate that. I want my teachers and the district to absolutely have most of the influence on policy and curriculum. And we can change that however we want by voting. But I mean, the idea that parents are going to know what is best for all of the students, much less even, I'll say, their own child. You might not agree with that. You might have to give me a political answer, Carole, but I can't stand these parents who tell teachers how to teach, what's happening in the school, and talk about it because I own my kid. You're not going to tell me. Well, then, take your kid out of the school. Increasingly, some of them are. What do you think?
Well, let's go back to basics. Parental rights have always been first and foremost. And you know how that happens? When you attend student conferences with your teacher, when you are a member of the PTO or PTA, when you go and sit through SAC meetings, when you sit on committees within the district, that is being parentally involved in knowing what your students, your own children receive. Yes. Now, let's take it a step further. In the state of Florida, over the last 24 years, the Republican Party has been in charge, which means they operate the Florida Department of Ed. They put into place those that lead the Department of Ed and the Chancellor of Education. So if we're being told we're horrible educators and that we're groomers, as was said so many times last night, that we've got pornography in our libraries and our classrooms, that we're teaching ideology and indoctrinating children, the only way that could be done is through the supermajority of the Republican Party who is in charge of our Department of Education for the state of Florida. No book gets into our hands without approval by the state. No library resources. Ultimately, the list is coming from Tallahassee and approved. These books have been on the shelves for 20, 30, or 40 years from books that I read as a kid here in Florida. So if they want to complain that we're doing something wrong, they should look within themselves. Because let's be honest, they've been in charge for 24 years. They are the supermajority. We can't get anything in, even as an amendment, half the time when it comes to an educational bill. So take the blame where the blame should be placed. Parents should be involved. I was a very active parent my whole 13 years in education of my child. And if you feel that we're not going down the right path in public education, change the way you vote in your local elections and who you are sending to Tallahassee.
Yeah, and that's true of every state. And also, the parental rights point is such a good point. We have so many rights as parents, and it's infuriating to be an involved, engaged parent for years, and then some parent cherry picks some book or passage from a book, even worse, and comes in and starts screaming about parental rights. And it's like, have you ever even gone to a parent-teacher conference, much less a PTA meeting or a school board meeting? You just showed up and started screaming about rights that you've never taken advantage of. You have the rights, and you've never taken advantage of them, and now you want to complain to us. That's happening all over. And so, my big question is, what do you think works tactic-wise, strategy-wise? Certainly where I live, it was all about organizing. But it wasn't the teachers' union. Like, our teachers' unions don't get involved hardly at all. Compared to what I've seen down there, from what you guys do, you guys are heavily involved. It's a bit different, but what works no matter where you're at, do you think?
I think having community involvement, that we're not just a silo, that we're working with, across our communities, those that want, need, and support public education. It's the only way it will work in Florida when we look at how broad this state is. When you're coming from Escambia and the Panhandle all the way to Nassau, all the way to the Keys, no one fit works for every community. No one fix works for every community. And I think what you have to just continually show is that those that you are sending to Tallahassee locally, you need to vet them. You need to know where they sit in public education and remind them, especially if they are a Republican, that you guys have been in charge for 24 years. Take the blame on yourself and tell us how you're going to fix that. We have worked across the aisle, between Andrew Spar and Nandi Riley and I, that has been something we've done over the last 3 and 5 years. We have worked across the aisle to work with moderate Republicans who view public education as an absolute right for every child who walks in through our doors, that we educate them. The only way to do that is to bring like-minded groups together to make sure that information gets out accurately. We cannot continue to have a daily barrage of Governor DeSantis or Senator Ingoglia telling us that we're horrible, that we're groomers, that we are indoctrinating children, when everyone knows we're not. And I think it is definitely going to take the village to make sure that our children receive the services, the curriculums, the books that they need to be the best they can be.
One of the biggest concerns is that you lose good teachers because they're being threatened, because they are being controlled, because they are being intimidated. There's no doubt you've lost good teachers in Florida. We can talk about teacher pay and benefits and other things. That's always been the fight in Florida. But the idea that they are being threatened by lawsuits and firing for simply teaching our kids, how much of a concern is that? Have you lost a lot of good teachers? I heard one teacher up there go up and say that he had quit.
It's heartbreaking, because when you see that the children love their teachers, and then the next thing you know, the teacher has to say, I can't, or she says, I can't continue to do this. The constant harassment by Tallahassee, by the lawmakers. And I always go back to these very, very few of the lawmakers in Florida have ever been an educator. They don't know how classroom management works. They don't know what falls upon a teacher or a support staff educator, because the list keeps growing. The pay doesn't grow at all, practically. No matter what the governor says, we just want to shuffle money and make it look like a bigger pot of money, but it's really not a bigger pot of money by any means. And so you've got double run buses, triple run bus drivers. You've got paras that cannot see every child that's on the list in ESC. You've got teachers who have covering classes. One young lady said her brother had not had a math teacher, if I'm not mistaken, for 2 years. They had been a long-term sub situation for 2 years.
Well, no offense, but that's my dream. No, to your point. No, it's a really important and scary and horrible thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. And we've, last time I got an update between January and spring, we were still down some 4,000 teachers in the state of Florida, which meant how many children did not have a certified teacher sitting in front of them every single day, and more than 5,000 support staff. And I'm going to put myself out there on a limb, but I'm going to say we might be at double that number come August when we go back. This is not an educator-friendly state, no matter what the governor says. $47,500 is a starting pay with the amount of work that is expected and the harassment, if we want to use that word.
It is appropriate.
What is in my classroom? What pictures, what flags are hanging on my wall? Just as a point of reference, I was at my own school board meeting 2 weeks ago, and this gentleman spoke and almost screamed into the microphone, "Take these gay flags down." And I'm sitting there looking in this room, and it's a beautiful old building. I'm like, what flags? What flags? what flags? And finally it dawned on me. He was talking about the character counts 6 colors of their flags. And I went, we're in a different universe. And it's that universe that is, in the end, truly going to harm the children in our care, because they're not being allowed to thrive under these kinds of circumstances. Long-term subs, parents or non-parents in the community yelling at school board members, the disrespect, and we talked about it last night as well, just the disrespect of the school board member, Shannon Rodriguez, to the other members and the superintendent. Our children are watching. And that's what they observed last night. Complete and utter disrespect for who the adults in that auditorium were, and for the children themselves, that this is the way these adults would speak in their presence.
So well said and so well done. You guys continue to do heroic and inspiring work. I was very inspired by what I saw in the public and the numbers that showed up last night, and the courage, real courage, because these people are not paper tigers. A lot of these people are dangerous, they're scary, they're intimidating, and they're often effective. But last night, you beat them back, and I hope you can continue to do that throughout the state. Because, you know, Carole, I guess last question, I think Andrew told me this, they've gone too far, in many cases, even with some conservatives in Florida. Is that right? The book banning and some of this anti-LGBT stuff. Obviously, a lot of people are supporting it, and it's terrible. But to some extent, they might have gone too far.
But absolutely, I agree with you, and I agree with Andrew. Why should one parent rule what 600 to 1,200 in the same school not be allowed to have? Right. You know, we've all got that parental right again. Go into the library, take your child's card out, put on the name of the book you don't want your child to read. Voila, it's done. So this 1, 2, 3 voices takes away the ability for 600 to 1,200 kids to read a particular book is absolutely wrong. And I do want to give a shout out to Lisa Massario, the president of Hernando's Education Association, the teachers union. What a target on her back. She is there to support every educator and every child in her community so that they receive the resources they need and the education that every child deserves when they walk in the front door of a public school in Hernando County. Kudos to her. It was a great evening of open conversation. And in the end, what prevailed was right.
Yes, it was scary at times. It was, ugly at times, but man, did the righteous win. And there's a lot of Lisa Massarios around the country. And you guys, Carole, you and FEA and everybody, it's just so hard down there, harder than almost everywhere else with that governor and those Republicans. You're doing great work, and I'm so glad that you're there, and I hope that you'll be able to keep doing it. But no one could blame you if you wanted to punch out, because, man, have you guys been up against it for as long as I've known you. But you just keep coming out and doing, I think, what is always the right thing. So congrats on your success last night.
Well, thank you. The fight will continue because children matter. They are our future. We are not going to give up on them. We are not giving up on those that are coming into the educational field, whether you're a first-year teacher or you keep coming back year after year, 40 years. They want to be there because that is their passion. And tomorrow, I'll be honest, I'm going to go to the Palm Beach Classroom Teachers Association retirement. And last year, I think it was more than 1,200 years of experience left to retire last year. And I just thought, wow, the lives they've changed. Yep. And that's why we do it. We do it so kids have a voice that they can go out and be whoever they want to be, do whatever they want to do with as many tools as we can provide them, because that's what we chose to do when we went into this career.
Thank you so much, Carole, for talking to me. Keep up the great work, and hope to see you at one of our hangouts soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pete, so much. Stay well.
There she goes. Thank you very much, Carole Gauronskas. And thank you. I should have mentioned that she's also a listener and subscriber to this show. She's been very supportive of me over the years. So really happy to have Carole on, and hopefully you'll go check out what they're doing, especially if you're in Florida, and support it, but around the country, because they are in the thick, in the mix, and they're doing really important work down there.
as I've witnessed myself so many times. That's it. That's all I've got for you on today's show. Looking forward to having you back here tomorrow. I've got Sam Cedar joining me. Always a pleasure to have one of my favorites on this show. I love his program. He does great work over there, so look for that. And that's it. That's all I've got. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, for spending some time with me, for learning along with me. I like to leave you on an inspiring quote, this one from Booker T. Washington. If you want to lift yourself up, lift up someone else. Yeah. Needed to hear that. I like it. And Amanda Gorman, I like this one as well. She's been banned in Florida, they're saying. She said, there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. There you go, folks. Have a great one. I love you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
The devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.